Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025. Time to wrap up the week for live shows. So we've brought Greg Dworkin in, and we'll cram everything we can into the first hour and then stumble our way through the second hour. And then we're out of here. And then, of course, I probably will actually then spend the rest of the day sitting down at the microphone trying to cobble together something new and fun for you to listen to for the balance of the week and the beginning of the week next week. There's plenty to do, plenty to read, of course. Whether or not I can actually sit down and read it and record it all and cobble it all together, well, that remains to be seen. I got to start on it yesterday. And as always, there's a million stories that have fallen through the cracks somewhere along the line. Today, though, plenty happening that's current. The Senate has passed its, I got a reasonably neutral-ish word for it. Of course, he's titled the bill, in his weird way, the One Big Beautiful Bill, and people have tried to, come up with different names or plays off of those names, and actually they look like Trump wrote the the reversal of the name too. Like, well, he calls it the One Big Beautiful Bill. We'll call it the Big Ugly Bill. Well, that's not so great. And of course, well, I don't know. I guess usually I think, people won't know what we're talking about unless we refer to it by the name that they see it referred to in the news. But One Big Ugly Bill, I think everybody knows what that is. It's just dumb, but I don't know. But there's a school of thought out there that says don't use his terminology for it. Similarly, the new migrant detention center that they built in the middle of the Everglades. So they're selling merchandise for it now because they've given it a cool name. So you shouldn't do anything to sell the cool name. Anyway, I just happen to see that the Hill just calls it the Mega Bill, which, I don't know. That's relatively neutral. And everybody kind of knows at this point what we're talking about because there's only one bill in Congress at this point. And they've really made that point very specifically by labeling it H.R. 1, by the way, which was interesting. On a number of levels, but you may recall that they very often reserve the low bill numbers ahead of time. They don't actually, everything else is chronologically numbered. It gets its number assigned to it based on when it's submitted, when it's dropped in the hopper, as they call it, and the clerk takes control of it. Except they very often skip over HR 1 through 10 and sometimes 10 through 20, and they give 10 through 20 to the minority. And 1 through 10 they keep for themselves, and then when they have really big, top, high priority bills, they can give them really cool low numbers. I don't know how cool it is to be like HR 3 or whatever, but I guess it's easier to remember than HR, 2765. And they've reserved this HR 1 is usually the top priority bill. It's rarely the only bill that they pass, but this is basically the case. It's also interesting just because it's a reconciliation bill. And for those of us who are procedure weirdos, and I think we've converted everybody into a procedure weirdo, this has been some years since we've done this, and I think this happened well before we began the podcast. But back in the day, there was an argument raging in the attempt to pass a different version and one with a public option of the Affordable Care Act. The use of reconciliation way back then, the Senate conservatives were insisting that things had to go in a certain order and the House had to vote first and the Senate voted second and they couldn't change that or something. But a real emphasis on the reconciliation procedure going in a certain chronological order. Reconciliation, of course, can't actually happen. I say can't because there used to be rules, but now there aren't, so they can. But reconciliation can't happen, and you can't designate a bill a reconciliation bill and therefore protected from the filibuster unless you are instructed by the budget resolution first to write a reconciliation bill. So the budget bill has to go first. The reconciliation bill has to come second in time. But one, they reserve those low numbers, so it doesn't really matter chronologically. And two, the budget resolution, it's not a budget bill, it's a budget resolution. So it would have an HRES or HJRES for joint resolution instead. So it wouldn't even take an HR number. But it is weird nonetheless. HR 1 is usually something you would submit on the first day of a brand new Congress, because you've written it already. It's one of your top legislative priorities. To see a reconciliation bill be an HR 1 hints that there's something manipulated to the process right away, but only to real super weirdos like me. Luckily, we have another real super weirdo with us who may not have caught that, but has caught everything else, like the current events. Greg Dworkin's job is to be that guy, and my job usually is to remember to cue a fanfare beforehand. And today I have done so, and I'll thank Scott once again for sending a few more fanfare suggestions, so I'll start trying them out over the next couple of days. This has been our most successful audience engagement effort yet. People mailing in suggestions for new fanfares. So we'll see, Greg, whether you recognize this fun one. Very medieval. Good morning, Greg Dworkin. How are you? Are you there? You've been forced off the air, I think. Or forced to hit your mute button and wrestle with it anyway.
Yeah, find it.
Okay, there
it is. If I can find it, I could turn it off. So
It's
where's that from?
one.
It
That
sounds
is
Englishy with kind of shallow brass.
Yes. Well, that is actually from. I thought about. I guess I can open up the whole thing and play the whole.
Don't.
But it's the beginning of Davy and Goliath.
Oh, Davy and Goliath.
Yeah, which I guess makes you
Sunday
Goliath
mornings.
in this one. Yeah.
To teach you a moral lesson.
Right. And the horns.
Davy's the owner, Goliath's the dog, right?
Yes.
Something like that.
Right. And the
Claymation.
animal companion. They're not owner, master, owner.
No, they're best buds.
Yeah. They talk to one another. This is the trumpet fanfare introduced the logo and sponsorship, I guess, or the auspices under which the show was made. The Evangelical Lutheran Church in America.
Yeah, I remember watching it as a kid. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, it's a cartoon. And then like
Right.
2 minutes into it, it's like, what the hell is
What
this?
is it? I don't understand what's going on. First of all, claymation.
What kind of goddamn moral lesson are they trying to teach me? Not to curse or what? What's going on with this?
Yeah.
Strange
Well,
stuff.
it was good stuff. I watched it anyway. And the trumpets are only sort of. I realized once I saw it.
They're
I don't
angelic,
remember
right?
Yeah, I guess so, or majestic in some way. But yeah, I didn't remember any of the theme music at all. I
Right.
played the
Well,
whole
Dear
thing.
Angels, you
Nope.
need a bass section. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, they didn't have baritone horns in the Lutheran Church, I guess.
Yeah, French horns.
Okay,
They really need that. So,
freedom horns.
this BS1 bill passes.
Yeah, and in the
That's what
Senate.
it's officially called, right?
We're not done yet because the Senate changed it. It's back in the House. The House is voting on it today. They've passed the rule.
Yeah, so we get to watch Chip Roy fold and everybody else. That's
Yeah.
kind of fun.
There's lots of stories
Here's the
about
headlines
there's
from the New York.
trouble.
New York Times alone had this series of headlines. Poorest Americans dealt biggest blow under Senate Republican tax package. Trump's policy bill could put the U.S. further behind China. Republican bill puts nation on new, more perilous fiscal path. Democrats bet jobs in red states would save clean power projects. They lost because, like, it's all the Democrats' fault.
Oh yeah,
Because it's the New York Times, right? So only Democrats have agency.
yeah.
So
Although
whole-
that's I don't know. That one splits the trouble between. We thought red states would say, well, we think clean power sucks, but they are jobs, and they
right.
say
The
shoot
proper
the feet,
headline
shoot
there is
the
red
feet.
states get screwed by BS1.
Right, and
That's what it should say.
and red states sacrifice selves in supplicants to Trump. Well,
Right.
we'll give up our jobs so that we can say, look how bad the economy is.
Right. So
Which
this
we're
is
not
kind of
supposed to say
interesting.
that.
I was I came across this Diane Swank, who is a labor economist, talking about the economy and what's going on, and it occurred to me as I was reading it. Keep in mind that what she's writing about has to do with tariffs and what Trump did at the very beginning of the term and how things take months and months and months to catch up to reality.
Yes.
But it also occurs to me that regular, ordinary people don't think like that. And any bad thing that happens with the economy, Democrats just ought to blame it on BS1 because
There's really
that's
no
why.
reason not
There's
to.
no reason
I
not
like
to.
that too. BS1. That's nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Diane Swank.
I don't feel like being neutral and even-handed. Screw them.
No,
They're screwing us.
I wasn't looking for a neutral term, but I was looking for a non-positive one, and I was like, well, this is at least neutral. Mega bill. I mean, giant pile of crap is also,
right,
usable. But okay, not Hillary Swank, Diane Swank. Sorry, Swank. Go ahead.
Right. GPOC, right? The Global War on Terror. This is the great pile of crap. So she writes, the pause disrupted shipping. She's talking about on and off tariffs. Triggered a surge in shipping costs as ships were redeployed to get goods from China back on the water and in the door prior to the risk of another surge in tariffs. And those shifts boosted some survey data on manufacturing in May and June, which will be short-lived. The disruptions to supply chains are similar, but not as bad as the pandemic, while consumers have less cushion to blunt the blow of higher prices. Even if tariffs don't go up from here, more are in the pipeline. The on-again, off-again front-running borrows from growth in the second half of this year. So what I'm saying is, if the second half of this year is bad,
that's now.
Blame it on BS1.
We're in the second half.
Yeah, the challenge is that the shifts will be occurring even as the cumulative effects of earlier curbs on federal employment and grant freezes hits the ecosystems. She's talking about universities and hospitals, which are often the employment engine in various communities, especially smaller ones.
Yeah, sometimes the whole thing.
I live in Danbury. Danbury Hospital is the largest employer in Danbury. So the Atlanta Fed has estimated the collateral damage of federal employment cuts could top 1.2 million jobs due to spillover effects. And that's prior to grant freezes and contract cancellations. It's probably even more than that.
Yeah.
And reversing course in those gains has consequences for everybody in the community, not just the scientists and the doctors. That's prior to the unique role the government and university research has played in spurring innovation and breakthroughs. So it's hard not to enter the second half with headwinds. And then you get this bill on top of that. So it's possible to avert a recession, but growth is below potential. That's going to nudge the unemployment rate higher. So maybe we'll get away with it. But that said, she writes, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So we're talking about recession here.
I'll have to agree. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, goat. The goat chimes in and says, that's true. I did see, and I think I put aside, there's an article, I don't know if we'll get to it or not, but the gist of it is, I guess there are now people saying, well, I thought the tariffs were supposed to have us like basically in recession at this point, or prices are supposed to be through the roof. And I'm seeing price rises in places, but I'm not seeing an across the board hike. What happened? And the economists are out reminding us there's a lagging factor here, and also businesses were trying to do everything they could during the chaos to try to patch over all of this and try and hold prices steady until they would know for sure, are these tariffs going to stick? I don't want to raise prices and then cut them and then raise them and then cut them if I don't have to. And now they're finding out
gas stations do that, but nobody else does.
Yeah, that's just about it. That and I think lobster restaurants.
No, they just go up.
That's true. You rarely say, well, we caught like a ton of them, so market price is $5. No, that's true. That doesn't work that way.
So, you have all of this going on in the background, and this is just another illustration. Why aren't you talking about all these people losing their health care? That's really it's just the distraction from that. Well, the economy isn't a distraction from healthcare. Healthcare isn't a distraction from the economy. None of these things are distractions. It's all part of the same BS1.
Well, our audience has not been distracted. Not that we've talked about it, but we haven't talked about it because we know that they're not distracted.
Yeah, some more to say about that, but it's terrible, it's wide-reaching, but really,
I'm not
there's
distracted,
no reason to jump out a window until later today when the House actually says, I can't vote for this, and then votes for it.
Yeah, that's today's rash of articles, like in order to balance things. Right.
Because there's Chip Roy has been promising to not vote for stuff, and he caves every time. Has he run out his string? And the short answer is no.
I don't know. Susan Collins is still alive. You tell me.
Well, she voted no because she knew the no didn't matter.
She went in.
Lisa Murkowski basically got bribed.
Yeah.
I don't really care how heartfelt and anxious and difficult the vote was. She screwed America.
Well, Captain Ahab got away with it. He did well. I understand.
Yeah.
So I guess
there's two guys she knows in Alaska who were whaling captains who got a break.
I thought that was
and
a
so
joke.
Therefore, it's worth screwing the entire country.
Yeah, well, Alaska doesn't consider itself beholden to the rest of the country, I guess. But certainly Lisa Murkowski doesn't. Yeah, there was a legitimate whaling captain tax deduction in there. And I saw somebody write something about it, and I thought they were kidding, like coming up with the dumbest possible thing, because who's a whaling captain now? There's two, and they got tax breaks, and apparently that was the price of her cooperation. So she runs their house on whale oil there in
right. There's been all this talk about Lisa Murkowski caucusing with the Democrats because she's sick and tired of it. That's like Chip Roy voting no on a bill.
Yeah, right. And I don't know how welcome she would be at this point. And
this.
Right. And coming in. And by the way, I saved the whaling industry. Saved the whaling industry. Saved the whales.
Saved your two friends.
No, saved the whales. The whales themselves from the whaling industry.
Alaska's, a small
I thought you libs liked
town, and everybody knows everybody else, and so it's awful. It's just awful.
Well, what can I tell you? Two whaling captains with three legs
between them. Let's talk about elections
them.
and politics besides that, because I think there's a lot else going on too.
All right, then.
Tuesday either had elections or elections got counted up.
Yes, what happened?
So today's Wednesday. Well, let's start with the headline here. New York City mayoral primary ranked choice results are finally in, and in the final round, Mamdani gets 56 and Cuomo gets 44.
All right.
So as predicted, Mamdani's going to win by double digits, actually 12. I figured 12 to 13. He wins by 12.
I see. All right. That is double.
A reminder that on the one hand, the general election in November will not feature ranked choice voting. So that part's out.
Right.
Even though it's still going to be a four-way race in theory, because you have Mamdani, you have the Republican Curtis Sliwa, who's going to get 5% of the vote, and then you have Eric Adams, who's the competition, and then Cuomo still has a party line to run on, even though he didn't get the Democratic nod, but he may or may not be campaigning with a 11-point, 12-point deficit here. Which is only going to get worse because that was the 56-44 that he lost by. The 12% that he lost by was at a time that people feared that he might be mayor again and therefore, or in elective office again, I should say, mayor for the first time, feared him and didn't want retribution after he won. That's gone. Now people don't think he's going to win. So I don't think he gets even as much as he did this way. And, without ranked choice voting, he's toast.
Yeah, I guess so. They only have ranked choice voting, and was it a Democratic
Party
thing that they decided to do?
I can't imagine the Republicans would agree to it, and they don't have it in the general.
But yeah, and so some places have tested it in the general. I mean, it has been used, but just not New York.
Yeah, Jared Golden is a congressman.
Right.
But New York City is not.
That's okay. I don't know what I would do anyway. I mean, I really Mamdani won. And, guess I'm done.
There's also a guy named Jim
Waldman.
He's a lawyer running on the independent line.
Okay.
Right? And so there's Adams, Sliwa, Walden, Cuomo, and Mamdani. And as those who follow New York politics have noted, and I had this in the pundit roundup the other day, people are talking about like Eric Adams has a chance, but everybody in New York City who knows anything about politics doesn't think so.
I have a chance. Yeah, well, I don't know. New York City has not been happy with their mayor in a long, long time, ever.
Not since David Dinkins.
And this one in particular sucks and is closely tied to and beholden to Donald Trump. And anyway, there's certainly no excitement around anybody that I could see but Mamdani. There's lots of panic around him too, but he's the only one that has any claim to having a voting constituency excited to vote for him.
Well, ducks are starting to fall in line as they realize what's going on. Here's Politico. Kirsten Gillibrand apologizes to Mamdani over jihad comments.
Yeah, that was
the New York senator was criticized for not defending the New York City mayoral candidate in a combative radio interview on WNYC's Brian Lehrer show. A caller to the radio program asked about holding Mamdani accountable for glorifying Hamas. And Lehrer pointed out, he's never done that. He's never supported Hamas.
That's all we have to do.
He's never supported jihad. And Gillibrand said the Jewish New Yorkers were alarmed by Mamdani's past statements. She reacted defensively and said she would like to sit down with him and talk through the issues. She also said he should denounce the phrase globalize the Intifada. And it's interesting in the sense that Mamdani never talks about globalizing the Intifada. He mentioned it as an answer to a question that somebody had. He clearly is on the side of Palestinian rights and doesn't think that the
a lot of people
Likud government in Israel is doing everything they should while defending Israel's right to exist.
A lot of Israelis
that ought to be,
that.
That on face value, ought to be enough for anybody. But if
that makes you a
want to take
center-right
after
Israeli
him for some reason, you'll find reason to take after him for that reason.
Yes. Now, I think, as I understood it, the error she was apologizing for, vindictive potshot, was that she had taken all of the publicity that was surrounding him, supposedly having said something about globalize the Intifada, and saying instead, he said he was for global jihad. Well, no. Those are two different words, and he didn't even say the other thing. So
different concepts, and why are you doing this?
Right.
And if you don't
What's
know,
your problem?
why did you even need to bring that up?
Yeah.
And, she
an
got
apology is a
lots
good
of crap
first
for it,
step.
and an apology is totally appropriate.
Yeah. Some people were grousing about the public nature of it, but I've heard about it, and I have never talked to Kirsten Gillibrand, so that makes it pretty public.
Again, just from the optics point of view, Gillibrand apologizing to Mamdani takes a lot of the teeth out of everybody's ganging up on him because everybody thinks this way. No, actually they don't.
Okay, I'll agree with that. And
what you will see is Long Islanders, people who represent Democrats who represent Long Island districts, be very wary of Mamdani because you have to understand the whole dynamics of Long Island. In their mind, they are a refuge from New York and all those people. What Archie Bunker used to say,
they're not, but they do believe they are.
We moved here because of you people living there. So it'll be popular with Democrats who represent swing districts on the island.
Yeah, where they don't vote for mayor.
To keep their distance. It doesn't matter.
Right. They don't vote in the mayoral contest.
Exactly.
For
this
ranked
isn't
or
the district
otherwise.
by district thing, and they don't vote. So, just so what?
Right. You should ask the New Yorkers who are voting to do ranked choice voting on which areas of the New York suburbs they like the least and see what happens.
Okay, more election news, which I think was worthwhile. And this was for elections coming. Well, let's do the one that just happened.
This already in.
This already in.
Yes.
Already in as opposed to going to be in tomorrow. Taniel writes, the nation's fifth most populous county.
Populous. Okay.
Guess?
Fifth most populous county. I have no idea. Nassau County.
San Diego.
San Diego County.
San Diego County.
I don't know.
Just shows its political future today, he writes, and appears to have chosen to have a democratic local government. And literal crickets to hear on the East Coast and everywhere. Quite the eye-popping example of the New York City bias of how we approach elections.
So
I said, gee, I had not heard about it. Let's look into it. And this is really interesting.
Okay, although I will say, you say, which county? San Diego. You're going to get crickets no matter what happens.
Right. San Diego County District 1 Supervisor election results.
All right, congratulations. Yes.
Congratulations. It's not over, but the Democrat, Paloma Aguirre,
I'll look.
Democrat, 53.2. John McCain, Republican, 46.8 for years.
Aguirre,
San Diego County,
Spanish. All right.
Was a Republican bastion, no more.
There's the point we needed. Right. Okay. True.
Okay. And it turns out that this is a special election taking place now. And this is where the story gets interesting. Because the previous county supervisor, who was a Democrat, quit.
Why?
County Supervisor Chair Nora Vargas announces she will not take a second term. And she said it's due to personal safety and security reasons.
Okay.
She won re-election to the District 1 seat in November, earning 62% of the vote. Vargas's office has not responded to requests for additional details. This is from the local radio TV station. About the security concerns, public records show the county paid more than $38,000 for a month of services from Allstate Security in October. A spokesperson from the San Diego County Sheriff's Office said in an email, there's no known or active threats. In recent years, we've noticed an increase in contentious public meetings and less civility in general. Some of these interactions rise to the level of a threatening behavior and criminal conduct. We investigate these incidents thoroughly and take appropriate action. That's really all they say about it. The meetings were getting more disruptive. They were getting more cantankerous and contentious. And I read this story and think, Lisa Murkowski voted in a way I didn't expect. I wonder why that is.
Yes, she has admitted in the past, she went on record saying, yeah, we all actually feel threatened. We all feel like there's a danger to our person in opposing Trump. I'm not going to be doing that no more, I guess it turns out. So, yeah, that could certainly be the case. And Nora Vargas, a Democrat, well, before having seen what happened in Minnesota, made that similar decision. Interesting.
Right. So this is a codicil to the story about Vargas stepping down, which was at the end of last year.
Yes.
What happens next is not entirely clear. The 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans remaining may not be able to agree to a candidate, therefore snap election in 2025. And so, yes, that's what happened.
Oh, okay. That's how we missed it. It was snap.
Yeah.
I guess that's it. All right, well, San Diego, I can imagine it being a Republican bastion, even closer to the border than L.A. County. That'll be a hot-button issue for them. Among all the buttons are hot in Southern California.
Hi everybody, this is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, belief, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everyone could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is that we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together, and by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com, secure, reoccurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show on the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. This just in
from Diane Swank.
Yes.
ADP payrolls dipped 33,000. Hiring freezes are taking a toll, as she was just talking about. Losses in the smallest firms were largest, less than 20 workers. It wouldn't take much to tip the apple cart with a rise in layoffs. A slow increase in unemployment is expected. The pace of the rise will be blunted by the drop in supply of workers. Maybe. It's not like white folk want to go out and pick those crops in California, so we'll see.
Right, but white folks will be hungry and unable to work.
Right. Anyway, the election to come, New Jersey.
Even in offices. Yes, New Jersey.
Like Virginia, there's off-year elections. Everybody loves to call it off-year, except the people in those states who say every year's an on-year for us.
And some other people online who yell at you about it.
Yeah. But Mikey Sherrill.
Yeah.
Democrat.
Sure.
Normie. Centrist. Republican. Jack Citarelli. Sort of a center-rightish guy who, like Youngkin, once Trump showed up, immediately glommed onto MAGA because that's the way to win.
Mm-hmm.
So Citarelli's now an extremist.
Okay. Well, that's
Cheryl Citarelli. Cheryl
Citarelli?
leads Citarelli by 20 points in Rutgers Eagleton poll.
I see.
20-point lead.
All right. Well, New Jersey.
13% undecided, so she leads 51-31. When leaners are included, it's 56-35. Each candidate is identified by their political party. This should serve as a baseline or barometer of how voters are feeling, not some crystal ball predicting the future 4 months from now, said Ashley Koenig, the director of the Eagleton Center for Public Interest Polling at Rutgers.
Yeah, well,
a lot can happen. It's not predictive. Polling failed in 2021 when Democratic Governor Phil Murphy defeated Citarelli by 3 points after several polls showed Murphy ahead by double digits. After the election, Murphy fired his pollster. Don't they all get fired after the election anyway?
Well, yeah, there's no more work.
An intense national political landscape that will once again surely play a role in the governor's race here at home. Come November, what matters is who actually votes. It all comes down to turnout, but it's not exactly apples to apples. When you look at 2021, that's pandemic related. Apathy. I don't know if I'm going out. I don't want to be around people. The Democratic enthusiasm.
Oh, wait a minute. All right. You don't have to wait, but go ahead. I'll find it eventually. Okay.
Enthusiasm.
There it is. I had the wrong page.
As you can see, look, in the New York City mayoral election,
yes,
as many or more people voted for Ma'am Danny as like the last time somebody got that excited about a mayor was David Dinkins.
That is hard to believe.
Like 35, 40 years ago. So that's important.
Yes, it was.
And then you have the San Diego stuff, and then you have other special elections. There's a lot of Democratic anger / enthusiasm. Enthusiasm to vote for their candidate and anger at Republicans, which is only going to get worse with this bill in Congress. Yes. So I don't know that you can compare it to Phil Murphy. I don't know that you can compare it to anything.
Well, Phil Murphy is there, and this person is in New Jersey, and therefore they were compared, but only to say, do not compare them.
Yeah, so...
That was pretty boilerplate stuff from her. It has to be said, though.
Yeah, the other, of course, is that, as I said, Mikey Sherrill is a centrist.
Yes.
And so if you're saying, well, Ma'am Danny's different because he brings out the youth vote and everybody is saying he's new and different and there's nobody like him and those boring old centrists are going to lose because...
Boring!
Right.
No, but that's not really true.
There we go. I'm helping you out. Sound effects. Anything you say, I will say again in a different voice.
I just need a honking clown horn. Honk, honk.
Here's your favorite.
Well, what the hell is supposed to do, you moron?
Exactly. You're supposed to vote for the Democrat. It doesn't matter who it is, except if it's Cuomo.
Right. In which case,
when you have a chance of voting for another Democrat, a younger one, a more dynamic one, so you do. But if you're running against the Jack Citarelli, you're going to vote for the Democrat. So I would expect Mikey Sherrill to win. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm looking around and there's really no evidence that Ma'am Danny is the only one who can do this and everybody ought to be like him to win. No. Time, place.
No.
You got to vote according to your own constituency.
Yeah. There are some things you could take away from his work.
Sure.
Anybody could apply.
Get the youth vote involved, but at the same time, it's not true that just because you're a centrist or you're older than 33, you're going to lose.
Right. That's not.
We're gonna. David Hogg is gonna run candidates everywhere. Well, they're all gonna lose 65-35 in the primaries.
Yeah, I don't know. He's not running anybody. He's encouraging people to run, I'm sure. And some people are like, "Who's that?" And
yeah, exactly right.
So okay. By the way, I did see that this was an odd bit, but didn't the New York Times, I think, end up correcting their reporting of age cohort turnout?
They did.
After making a huge deal
the youth vote wasn't quite what they originally said, but it was still pretty high.
Yes, but they were saying the 18 to 24s were the top cohort. It's unbelievable. Everybody, this is a revolution.
Yeah, but they weren't. They were slightly under the next one.
Yeah, but it's still
the 25s to 39. So between them,
these are numbers.
They still did quite well.
One's higher than the other, and
it's also the New York Times, and they shouldn't have screwed up.
Yeah, right. I mean, like I said, here's the numbers.
Like they can afford, unlike other papers, they can afford proofreaders.
No. This number is actually the higher of these two.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
I don't know that they got the... Well, anyway, it was interesting. It was interesting to see them publish that correction. They had to do that, and everybody but it was 100-point type headline. No, it's the 18 to 24s. It's not. It's young, but not that young. Okay. I mean, it was okay. The stories are mostly still the same.
Yeah, I would have expected less voters in that age. No. It's fewer voters.
Oh.
I mean, that's correct. But did they get the actual numbers right? No, they don't.
No. So, I don't know. That was a little bit of a surprise after having run around with hair on fire. Oh, my God, the 18-year-olds showed up more than anybody. Well, they showed up a lot more than they usually do.
Show up,
yeah.
First of all.
Well, it's summer.
And secondly, Mandami won. And it was by a lot.
Yes. Ooh, actually, I wonder if that has... they should be tracking that. Someone needs to put a flag on that. Do the 18-year-olds show up because he's the most awesome candidate, or did the 18-year-old show up because voting is happening when school is out?
It's 102 degrees. I don't think it's that.
I don't know, but they could go get ice cream or bubble tea. I don't know. What are the kids drinking these days?
Oh, I meant to ask you. So you're going to be away for the next few days.
Yes.
Maybe through Monday, we'll see.
Yeah, true.
So I want to know, are you like John Fetterman? I don't need this. I want to go to the beach.
Yeah,
I'm not going to stick around and vote on this stupid thing that's going to change the entire course of U.S. history and maybe, bring in fascism and get a whole bunch of people thrown out of here because we're going to pay the Gestapo to set up alligator Alcatraz camps all over the country. I want to be at the beach.
I mean, people do. I think that was his idea of, I need to appeal to the youth vote. They want to be at the beach too. This is very humanizing of me. I don't know. I don't have that job, so that's one thing. I'm also about 1/3 the size of Fetterman, I guess. I want to be at the beach. The place I'm going is near the beach. I'm going to South Carolina.
You're on the East Coast. Everywhere's near the
Yeah, right. So I'm going to go fix South Carolina. I'll be right back. I'm going to Nancy Mace's district, and just to see if she does anything weird.
So you're saying you're not part of the Pennsylvania slacker party the way that Fetterman is?
Right. Although we are both wearing
what a
shorts.
God awful thing to say.
Probably.
I mean,
yeah.
You think Kirsten Gillibrand says stupid things. John Fetterman says stupid things too.
Well,
luckily they're Democrats and nobody pays attention.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was a weird statement, but I mean, everybody would rather be at the beach than doing a hard job. Especially a hard job that you're going to lose and people are going to get hurt by. But whatever. He's not. He's supposed to be trying to rehabilitate his image at this point, and I guess he just doesn't care. And that's bad news, and I guess you got to start thinking about who's going to be the next Democratic nominee for Senate in Pennsylvania in a little while. So he'll have a struggle, and I don't know where they're going to come up with another. Well, I don't know. I guess is Josh Shapiro going to be busy at that point? I suppose. Is that where he goes next? If he's not president?
Josh Shapiro?
Yeah.
Well, what? Fetterman and Shapiro don't get along at all.
No, exactly. So, could he just say, I'll take that Senate seat? Instead of
you. You mean Shapiro taking the Senate seat?
Right.
Why, after being governor, does anybody want to be senator?
I don't know, but they used to do that back in the day.
They used to do regular order. They used to matter.
True. I don't know. They used to think very rarely does it work out.
I hate to say it, but the only two that matter are Collins and Murkowski.
Yeah.
And they always vote wrong, but they absolutely positively matter. I mean, Murkowski was absolutely the key figure.
It does tend to run the other way. These days, a lot of senators then leave and run for governor. It used to be that they did the other way around.
But the odd thing is,
I think it had
all
to
of
do
them
with
could
term
have been
limits.
that way. Every single one of them could have been Lisa Murkowski demanding, I'm the pivotal vote.
Yeah.
And none of them are. I don't get it.
I am not sure. I don't know. They have roles to play, I guess, and they're like, oh, yeah, but I can't. Maybe that's it. I can't be in the Murkowski lane. She's already there. It doesn't work. I don't know. There's no limit to the crazy lane.
Just say no on your vote, and then all of a sudden you're right there. It doesn't take a lot.
That's true. Well, I don't know. Tom Tillis said no, and it just got bounced straight out the door. So I don't know. Maybe it's more difficult than we think, but
maybe they are more
I can't see why. Yeah. That's possible. The crazy
that's what
lane
I keep
has
coming
plenty
back
of people,
to.
though.
Murkowski's afraid, and maybe everybody else is even more afraid than her.
Yeah. You would, I don't know. Well, the house is different. House is larger, and any number of people can be in that lane. I was just wondering, like, why didn't Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert kick Nancy Mace out? Say, this is our lane, the crazy lady lane. You can't be in here. But they don't get along either. So I guess they're just rivals for the queen of crazy, possibly. Chip Roy does his thing. He doesn't want anybody else being the guy who's... How does he manage that in a 435-member body, being the only guy who's always the holdout? Well, Thomas Massey.
Well, wait a minute. Massey is the holdout who actually sticks to his guns. It's always the Kentucky Maverick.
That's a different lane.
No. The other side is that Chip Roy can't claim the mantle of the craziest person in Congress. There's at least two people ahead of him.
Yeah, that's very difficult.
Taylor Greene and Victoria Spartz, who's no, yes. Always.
Right. She's also got that thing.
Or actually, to be fair to her, it's no, yes.
I have to get that from Blazing Saddles.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know. I can't figure these guys out. I don't know anything about what's happening in Fetterman's head. He and literally, that could be a physical problem in his head. That's true. He's never been the same really since his stroke, and maybe he's just trying to finish his term and
I
be
think
done.
that stroke did a tremendous amount.
How could it not? It's a stroke
out of him, and he is. Maybe this is not the right job for you. Maybe you should just quit.
And that's okay. It's it's a tough job. We're glad you tried it, and having a stroke just rewrites all the rules for you, and means you got to evaluate whether or not you're up to that job. Not because we think you're dumb or terrible, although some people probably do think that, but if you've had a stroke, this is a demanding job, and we're seeing him say, I can't, or I don't want to, and I'm on the verge of not living up to those demands.
All right, so I found
something.
I lied and I found a video.
All right. Oh, okay.
At the very bottom of the list there, it's from Blue Sky.
Oh, excellent.
And it's Zohran Mamdani's opening salvo on the general election.
Okay.
And I haven't heard it yet, and I just thought it would be worth listening to.
Okay, well, we'll see whether it's full of harsh language.
1 week ago, we shocked the establishment and redrew the political map with a campaign relentlessly focused on the needs of working people. Since then, a lot of people have asked me if I was surprised by the results. In some ways, I was. We always thought our victory would come after multiple rounds of ranked choice voting. So when we got more first-round votes than Eric Adams got in 7 rounds in the last election, it was astonishing. But in other ways, this was always the plan. We wanted to rebuild a coalition that had frayed over years of disappointment and neglect.
Oh, I got to pause it there. That was interesting that he compared himself there to Adams rather than Cuomo doesn't even get a mention. That's kind of funny. I mean,
I haven't seen it yet, but not yet he has.
Right. Well, we have 2 minutes left to find him. This is a lengthy video, but that's all right.
To win people back to a Democratic Party that puts working people first. So let's break it down. Last November, New York City saw some of the biggest shifts towards Donald Trump of anywhere in the country. Much of it took place in working class and immigrant neighborhoods. A few days after the election, we went to Hillside Avenue in Queens and Fordham Road in the Bronx.
Right.
Not
you
to lecture,
this.
but to listen. Yep. And what we heard was a desire to bring down the cost of living. That was our focus, and many of those voters came back. Brighton Beach went for Trump by 44 points. Last week, we won it by 16. College Point was a plus 11 Trump neighborhood. We took it by 8 points. We saw similar or even bigger swings at Bath Beach, Astoria Heights, and the North Shore of Staten Island. The headline is clear. We can win back voters many have written off if we give them something to vote for, not just tell them what to be against.
That's interesting. Is that a valid comparison, though, to say, well, Trump, these areas went for Trump, and then compare it to a primary? Well, we took it by 16, among Democratic-only voters. You took it by 16 points.
Yeah, but he's making the point that even in a primary, which is going to be only Democrats and not everybody, you are a product of where you live. And so, if you happen to be running against somebody who is relatively conservative and you win big in an area where a conservative like Trump or a MAGA person like Trump won big, it fits into the theme that he's trying to say. It's not like everybody in that that micro neighborhood or assembly district, which is what he's looking at, or individual areas, is so enamored that they went for Trump by 35 points, and I don't even have a chance of competing there. In fact, he won there. So,
or that I guess maybe even the Democrats there are at least conservative Democrats.
Yeah, exactly. And he won there anyway.
Right.
I mean, if you're talking about Brighton Beach, you're talking about Russian emigres, for example.
Right. Oh, and I had music for them once, but I lost that page.
Yeah, Greek music.
Well, I'll go back to the klezmer stuff for them instead. I think I'll just keep that. It was hard to find Russian music.
Yeah, so it's not a one-to-one comparison. It's not apples to apples, but, the general point. And remember, this is a campaign ad.
That's true.
So he's not lying. For him. He's just trying to make a
I gave him a Pinocchio.
Yeah.
But that was just because he asked me for a Pinocchio doll, and I gave him one. He's going to turn into a real boy, I think, by the general election. All right, part 2 is coming up on Adams voters. Let's see what he has to say about that.
When Eric Adams eked out a win by 7,000 votes 4 years ago, he called it a mandate and pronounced himself the new face of the Democratic Party. Even then, it was a little ridiculous. But in some neighborhoods, he did put up impressive margins.
You should have seen, we're lacking in the video there. He has such a grin on his face when he says, even then, it was a little ridiculous. That's good.
Take Flatbush, for example. Eric Adams dominated there, double digits ahead of his next rival. On Tuesday, there was also a double-digit victory, except it was for us, over Andrew Cuomo. We flipped Crown Heights by 45 points, North Corona by 33, and Jamaica by a staggering 57 points.
Now remember, again, Adams isn't running.
Right?
What? This is how Adams did in the primary versus, Myra Wiley, and other people that aren't running. Adams isn't running in this primary, so when he says he flipped, he meant he came out on top, but again, it's not apples to apples, but still interesting.
Okay.
Voters that Eric
because
Adams
again, the Adams voter, who lives in this area, who is a Democrat, compared to your last point, Trump isn't a Democrat. The Adams voter was willing to consider him because he did pretty well in that area.
Mm-hmm. I guess so.
So some of this was persuasion, in other words.
I like it.
He's making a point about that.
He's a persuasive guy.
With him to City Hall. He served his donors instead. Whether we're talking about young voters, older voters, or just plain disaffected New Yorkers, no campaign in recent history has been as successful at driving new voter registrations, especially in the 100 days before the election. Just take a look at this graph. According to the Times, in the 14 days before the registration deadline...
let me assure you, the graph is impressive.
About 37,000 people registered to vote. That's over 10 times the number of new registrations over the same period of time in the 2021 mayoral primary. As a result, we won big with zero prime voters, New Yorkers who had not voted in any recent mayoral primary. For instance, in Gravesend...
That's an interesting term, too. Zero prime. It becomes clearer in a minute. I remember seeing this video. But you were... Yeah, so this is... He did better than anybody with people who have... either never voted in a primary or just have skipped a lot of
decades.
Them. Yeah. So if you're old and voted for him, it was likely that you hadn't voted in a primary in some time. And the 18 to 24s or 25 to 36 probably just skipped a bunch of primaries. Zero prime means you haven't voted. That's zero of the last, whatever number of primary voters. Zero prime. I guess prime you could consider it even if they didn't mean for it to be short for primary. Zero primary voter.
If you want, you can think of it as the pollster's likely voter screen.
Yes.
And why it didn't work.
That's true.
And why PPP, public policy polling, which threw out their likely voter screen and said, if you said you're going to vote, we counted that. I don't care how many previous primaries you voted.
Yeah, I don't care.
Zero. And they got the election closer than anybody else.
Yeah.
They still were off by 11 points, but they picked the winner.
Yes. All right. That's really what everybody's looking at. I'll rewind it a little bit so he can make his point again. We're in the last 20 seconds of the video here, so let's run it to the end.
The same period of time in the 2021 mayoral primary. As a result, we won big with zero prime voters, New Yorkers who had not voted in any recent mayoral primary. For instance, in Gravesend, at least 32% of all voters were first-time primary voters. Most campaigns focus on triple primes, New Yorkers who voted in the last 3 primaries. But this strategy ignores most of our city, yet we knew that we could turn them out if they saw themselves in our policies.
All right, there's more to it, but it's split into two pieces. There's another one I haven't seen, but the part 2 of the video
sent it
follows.
to you. It's shorter, but it's interesting.
1 week ago,
Wait a second,
we
I
shocked
gotta. I already gave you your chance, Zohran. Don't be the destroyer of my podcast. Okay.
Yeah, and remember, this is a campaign commercial. This is going over the social media, over his million Instagram followers.
Yes.
And we'll see what kind of effect it has.
It looks pretty good. It was well done. He looks like he's got it together. He's speaking to everybody's concerns. It's and he's hyping himself a little bit without necessarily looking like he's a hype man. So that's nice.
Yeah,
it's well done.
And he doesn't look exhausted.
That's true too. He doesn't need to go windsurfing or take a vacation. He's ready to roll.
He's, okay, that was a really rough primary. 9:00 tomorrow. You be there because I'm going to be out at 7 and jogging up and down Manhattan. So I hope you can find me.
And that's one of the things people say you get from a younger candidate, and it's happening right now. Yep. So pretty good. Well done. He sounds persuasive. I liked the explanation. By the end, I understood. Okay, 0 prime means you haven't voted in any primaries, but they're focusing usually on they're looking for triple prime. Not they've done 3 things that they think are awesome, but rather they've done the same thing 3 times, vote in a primary. The last 3 primaries, you're a pretty likely voter. That's true. Mm-hmm. All right. Good video. I kind of like it. I don't know whether I have time to play the rest of it, but later on I'll watch it. Cause
the other video, part 2, is half as long. It's the whole thing is relatively short. Just that... you could have played the whole thing, except Blue Sky doesn't allow you to do longer videos.
That's what it is. All right. Well, he's talking about how he built his coalition and how many doors he knocked on, and that he won a lot of different ethnic neighborhoods as well.
Yeah, basically he said, look, I'm young, I'm not tired, I can do it again, and let me just highlight some of the things that I did to win, including getting new voters. You care about that, don't you? New voters who didn't vote for us before, people who never voted. That's me.
Yeah.
So, I'm ready.
I'm looking at the closed captioning here, and one of the things that he's doing, it might be fully intentional for the reason I like it, but it might just be, well, this is the facts, and he's parsing, he's being a data quant right here, which I don't know why Nate Silver doesn't like him, but anyway, he went crazy. So, but he's parsing the stats so finely that he's doing something else that is just a great campaign strategy. He's calling out all the neighborhoods and micro neighborhoods that you have mentioned in the past, and people like hearing their neighborhood get mentioned. Not just saying, well, I'm good in Brooklyn or bad in Staten Island. He's like down to the block. Some of these neighborhoods, like I've never really experienced them being called out as neighborhoods, but in fact they are. And to New Yorkers, they're very familiar. And so basically, hey, he said my street. That's exciting.
Yeah,
that works.
It is.
Good job.
Anyway, in the minute or two left, we're
good job,
about 4 minutes away from the break or so, but I don't have that much to talk about. I do want to acknowledge this Blue Sky picture of a very hot and sweaty Jimmy Swaggart saying, wherever I am right now, how does that?
Yeah, it's very hot and then very hard to get through this needle eye, whatever it is. What's
Jimmy
going
Swaggart
on here? How come
dead.
It's so hot?
He died, and
boo-hoo. Condolences.
He's in a better place.
Sorry.
As far as I'm concerned, he's where he belongs.
Right. He's in a better place. I don't know if it's a great... he may not regard it as better.
He may not think so.
For me, it's a lot better to have him there than he was here. You're right. Okay. Well done. True.
Or as we like to say in the old neighborhood, you have to say something good about the dead. He's dead. Good.
Right. All right. Well, that's what happens with televangelists. When they die, everybody makes fun of them.
Crooks and grifters and swindlers. Yeah. You deserve everything that happens to you in the afterlife, if there is one.
Yeah.
Thank you, God.
There we go.
There you go.
I don't know who's saying that. I'm just saying someone.
Oh, I know exactly who's saying that.
Oh, all right. Well, that's unfortunate. What can you do? All right. I appreciate it. Thank you. And thanks for coming by and you say you have nothing and you filled an hour.
Yeah, well,
that's
I do
the
that
usual
every time
thing.
I'm on.
Right. That is how this works. If I played the sound clip that this is not how this works, it would be wrong. And then I would say, wrong, sir.
Wrong, sir. Okay.
I can do it all by sound effects.
So,
okay. Yes.
By the way, the thank you God is in fact from Animal House. In case you forgot.
That is true, right? I mean, I don't know who out there is thanking God that Jimmy Swaggart is dead, but it's not me. It's this young child from 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's just a movie clip, people. It doesn't mean anything in particular. If you're a big Jimmy Swaggart fan, I don't know what you're doing here, but sorry.
Right.
Oh, yes. I have a listener comment about Lisa Murkowski. I can feed it to you on your way out. Mo has chimed in to say, you guys are forgetting Lisa Murkowski gets a pass to do whatever she wants because she's considered unbeatable. In 2010.
Oh, that's not true.
Well, I don't know. Maybe she thinks herself unbeatable.
She may think of herself as unbeatable, but like Tom Tillis, it's not always clear who's going to actually run again. But if she wanted to win, she probably could, but it would be a 2 or 3 race. She'd sort of run as an independent. She is popular, but not insurmountably popular. It's not like Lindsey Graham running in South Carolina.
Yeah, I guess. Although he does remind us of this, rather miraculous thing from back in 2010 when she was actually beaten in the Republican primary by a Tea Party nut and was declared dead politically. But then she ran as a write-in campaign and won. I do recall when she did that write-in campaign. I'm like, Murkowski, you want people to write?
That actually makes her more or less invulnerable to being primaried.
Yes.
She's not scared of being primaried. Okay. You did that. Right. I won anyway. Not going to work. Sorry. But that's not the same thing as I'm invulnerable in the general election.
Okay. You think Alaska
it's always
has a chance?
Be close.
Okay. Well, good. And sometimes if you run on fish, right, as you've pointed out, you can win in Alaska.
Yeah, if you're pro-fish,
you're super powerful and something.
Right, and I don't know that supporting the whaling community over the fish.
They're not fish.
Yeah, so. Well, that's your loophole. Good luck with that.
You think I can't do that one? I thought you were supposed to be pro-fish, and now you're pro-whale.
I'm pro-whale.
They're fish.
Well,
no, those are mammals. They're marine mammals. Oh, yeah, I see.
Being anti-whale is not pro-fish. Yeah, well, whales eat fish, so,
Yeah, so maybe that's it. That's what it is. And the kind of whaling. They may be preying on the salmon there, and that's pro-fish. I don't know. We'll find out. But
she gets the New Bedford, Massachusetts vote.
Always true. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Now 100% Greg Dworkin free for the rest of the day. That's not a selling point. It just happens to be true. It's actually a problem, but we do have other things we can turn to. As a matter of fact, while we're on the subject of listener input, one of the things about listener input, and I guess I should instruct everybody or remind everybody, when you chime in, you should let me know whether or not I should identify you or in what way I might identify you. Sometimes people want to be or want to remain anonymous or something like that, or they say, well, you use my first name or whatever it is. And sometimes it's clear from the email address that they use or previous communications, but it's always a good reminder to let me know whether or not I should or should not identify you. And I got a note here from listener. Does this help to say, well, we'll just take the cautious route here and say, we'll identify them by first name, which we can do. But the first name here, well, I don't know how many Senecas are listening. But, the point here is that the government can't necessarily pick out which Seneca it is. But Seneca notes here that it turns out that, yes, Zohran the Destroyer is, in fact, tailor-made for selling merchandise, particularly to the younger voters. So there already is, in fact, Zohran the Destroyer merch out there, and sent me a link to and a screen cap of one such designateeshop.com version of this. I would say that there are more to come. And I was thinking more along the lines of seeing, like, memes of Zohran's picture with, red laser beam eyes, the way they did with the Dark Brandon stuff. But this one saying Zohran the Destroyer of high rent prices, of small business red tape, of rising bus fares, of childcare costs, all very true in terms of his platform. He hasn't delivered on the platform yet. That is yet to come, and we'll see. But yeah, this wasn't the direction I was hoping it would go, but it is merchandise, and so quite true. Thank you, Seneca, for having a sharp eye out for that. But it was an easy prediction. Seneca says, you were right, and I was, but I suspect, I hadn't yet seen the merchandise, but I suspect that by the time I said it to you, there was already merchandise, just because it really, that was an easy prediction. It's good stuff. Zohran the Destroyer really should be on merchandise, and I couldn't possibly have been the only or even the first person to think so. And the speed of the internet being as what it is, I bet that was up before I even said it. I just didn't know it because I didn't look, because I'm a busy guy, but thanks, Seneca, for filling in and doing the groundwork for me on that one. All right, let's see. Other things that I need to turn to. They're all in Pocket. There's a few days left in Pocket. Speaking of making merchandise, I will point out also, I don't know where I saw this, probably somewhere on Blue Sky, out in Norway, where this happened. Do you remember that story the other day of the Norwegian tourist who got denied entry into the United States because they had on their phone a particular manipulated meme photograph of J.D. Vance that depicted him bald and probably, a couple pounds more overweight, let's say, and with crazy eyes and shiny skin, and I don't know who did it and why, but it's just basically, I understand it just to be for the purpose of making fun of J.D. Vance for various reasons, and that he's a bit of a weirdo. Anyway, this guy had it on his phone, and it was a relatively obscure meme, but they found it on his phone and denied him entry and said, there's your reason. You have a manipulated photograph on your phone. We don't think you created it. You just liked it enough to have it on your phone. And it's not clear whether it was, saved to the photo roll or just on his social media thing. Anyway, that's no grounds for denying anybody entry, but because, sovereignty being what it is, they can turn you away for almost any reason. And you have no recourse about getting into the country on your visa versus returning to the country because you're a citizen. They haven't done that yet. But anyway, it also triggered the Streisand effect and made this stupid meme picture of him extremely popular, and everybody wanted to see it. What is this weird picture that gets you bounced from the country? And it's going to get a lot more people bounced from the country, but it's also, a bit of a pushback, and it is also merchandise. I don't know how pricey the stuff is, because it's priced in NOK, which I imagine is Norwegian krona. Anyway, and with European currencies, one, they write it funny because they use commas instead of decimal points. They obviously think we write it funny, and so for it to say 100,000, like to an American eye, you're like, is that a typo? Is that 100,000 kroner? But then you realize, well, it's probably not $100,000 to get this. She's made T-shirts and tote bags and coffee mugs, but also an artistic print. The artist here, I guess, has done some additional work on this in order to make it her own interpretation of this weird meme photo. Ida Bjerkis, I'm guessing Bjerkis. Ida Bjerkis has offered this as a print that's frameable and it's high quality, high res, and you can get it in any number of sizes, but you can also, like I said, get T-shirts, tote bags, hoodies, mugs, all of these things under the label of Make Democracy Hot Again, which I'm not sure how we get to that, and I guess maybe it's look at how dumb this guy is, let's not have him in office, and then democracy can be hot again. Or whether it's tongue-in-cheek about how hot the bald, shiny J.D. Vance photo is. I don't know. Anyway, people are merchandising off of it, and I think you should too. Except don't take any of Ida's business. She got there first, or possibly second, but I heard about her first. Anyway, speaking of the transfer of large amounts of money for, mysterious reasons, the New York Times tells me that, yes, another of the major television networks in the United States has knuckled under and is paying bribes to Trump. This time it's the one we've all been waiting for. CBS and Paramount, its parent company, are agreeing to pay Trump $16 million to settle the so-called 60 Minutes lawsuit. I mean, it is about 60 minutes. It's a so-called lawsuit because on the facts, there's no effing way whatsoever that you could prevail, and all lawyers under normal circumstances would say, yeah, we'll go to court on this, because we're going to end up paying $0. We're going to, in fact, make them pay us for the trouble of taking us to court. But it's not that CBS thinks it bears some responsibility to Trump over their actions. Remember, after all, their actions were they filmed an interview with Kamala Harris for 60 Minutes. They played that interview in the normal fashion, that is to say, lightly edited, so that, if you cough or say they might edit that out because they only have 60 minutes to play with. Trump accused them of manipulating the whole thing and somehow editing it to make it look like she was saying things she wasn't saying, or not saying things that she did say, or who knows what. And it was a ridiculous claim. But what was really at stake here what was really happening here was Trump wanted to be mad at 60 Minutes, and he saw a pressure point. Paramount wants to acquire another company and merge with it, and it's a big enough merger that I guess it requires some sort of government clearance to do it, and they were afraid that Trump would instruct the agencies to withhold that approval, and that the merger wouldn't go through, and they would therefore lose more money from the failure of that merger than they would lose by agreeing to pay him X millions of dollars. And the real question here was, as between Trump's lawyers and Paramount CBS lawyers, could they find a number that would make Trump happy? This is the amount of money you will get, and you will save face in your claims. And really, honestly, $1 would allow him to save face in his claims if you agree to pay it to him. But the number has to be as high as he can get with it, yet still being a deal, I guess, for Paramount CBS. How much money do we have to give you in order to make you approve our merger and still make money from the merger, given that we sent some of this money out the back door to you? Or looked at another way, economically speaking, Trump saying, if you want to do a merger because it's valuable to you, you can do it in this country, but I need to get my cut of it. I'm the one who approves whether or not you're allowed to make the merger. Well, that's worth something, or it ought to be worth something to you. How much money is it worth to you to buy the approval? And the answer is $16 million. So here's the coverage of it. Paramount to pay Trump $16 million to settle 60 Minutes lawsuit. President Trump has sued over an interview with former Vice President Kamala Harris. The company needs federal approval for a multi-billion-dollar sale. So $16 million might be an easy price tag. You just bake it into the sale price or the sale revenues. Benjamin Mullen, Michael M. Greenbaum, perhaps Grynbaum, Lauren Hirsch, and David Enrich, you tell me, David, call me up and let me know, are the authors of this piece, just out today. And here's the news. Paramount said late Tuesday, it's yesterday, that it has agreed to pay President Trump $16 million to settle his lawsuit over the editing of an interview on the CBS News program 60 Minutes, an extraordinary concession to a sitting president, or to anyone at all, of course, but the fact that it's a sitting president makes it that much more extraordinary, by a major media organization. They should never, had it not been a sitting president, they would not have made this concession. And it's also extraordinary for a sitting president to sue a news network. Normally, they don't care. And two, they would say, I can't be suing a news network. They'll destroy me in their coverage. But somehow, everything's upside down now. Paramount said its payment includes Mr. Trump's legal fees and costs, and that the money, minus the legal fees, will be paid to Mr. Trump's future presidential library. Which, why is there one? And there isn't. So, as part of the settlement, Paramount said that it has agreed to release the written transcripts of future 60 Minutes interviews with presidential candidates. The company said that the settlement did not include an apology. They probably found that to be a win for them. The deal is the clearest sign yet that Mr. Trump's ability to intimidate major American institutions extends to the media industry, which it already had. Many lawyers had dismissed Mr. Trump's lawsuit as baseless, it was, and believed that CBS would have ultimately prevailed in court, in part because the network did not report anything factually inaccurate, and the First Amendment gives publishers wide leeway to determine how to present information. Except when it doesn't, from now on, I guess, right? It's not that we've changed the First Amendment or repealed the First Amendment or overturned First Amendment jurisprudence. It's that we found another pressure point that makes you prefer to pay Trump than to challenge him. So it's not that he has won on First Amendment grounds. It's that he's won on grifting grounds. But he'll, of course, say, if I didn't win on First Amendment, then why did they pay me? Because I sued them and they decided to pay me. They knew they were going to lose. It's just a lie. They were going to win, but they didn't want to go through with it because it was going to cost them in the merger. It's really sad. But, he knew exactly what he'd be able to get out of it when he went into it. That's why he did this thing. The article continues. Shari Redstone, the chair and controlling shareholder of Paramount, told her board that she favored exploring a settlement with Mr. Trump. Some executives at the company viewed the president's lawsuit as a potential hurdle to completing a multi-billion-dollar sale of the company to the Hollywood studio Skydance, which requires the Trump administration's approval. Why? Don't know. 'Cause. After weeks of negotiation with a mediator, lawyers for Paramount and Mr. Trump worked through the weekend to reach a deal ahead of a court deadline that would have required both sides to begin producing internal documents for discovery, according to two people familiar with the negotiations. Another deadline loomed. Paramount was planning to make changes to its board of directors this week that could have complicated the settlement negotiations. Like, I guess people would have said, no, don't do it. Or I don't know. I don't know how it would have complicated them. And, I don't know, again, exactly what the reason is that this merger requires government approval, but it must have to do with the fact that you're a major network and, we still consider them to be like major communications channels and that there's some public interest involved in all of this. Although I think basically those concepts should just be declared dead at this point. There's no public interest in this, certainly. But, we're interested in it, but it's not in our interest. Anyway, a spokesman for Mr. Trump's legal team said in a statement that the settlement was another win for the American people, delivered by the president, who was holding the fake news media accountable. See how he exploits this? CBS and Paramount Global realized the strength of this historic case and had no choice but to settle, the spokesman said. It's quite the opposite, but, if you offer to settle, people are going to claim the opposite instead. The size of the settlement, $16 million, is the same sum that ABC News agreed to pay in December to settle a defamation case filed by Mr. Trump against the network and one of its anchors, George Stephanopoulos. Paramount's board was concerned that paying a higher amount to settle the case could increase the company's exposure to potential legal actions from shareholders accusing them of bribery. And they would be right about that, but the question is, keeping the number down to $16 million, that's down, believe it or not, makes it less likely that shareholder derivative suits would be filed because the damages are pretty, relatively low, especially if there's a multi-billion-dollar payoff in a merger sitting on the table. The sale of Paramount would end the Redstone family's decades-long control of CBS News and Paramount Pictures and put it in the hands of David Ellison, the son of Larry Ellison, the tech billionaire who has backed Mr. Trump. So the first part of the sentence sounded pretty good. End the Redstone family's decades-long control of CBS News and Paramount Pictures. Terrific. That's their exit strategy. Get out. And America says, good riddance. However, then you ask, well, who are we swapping in? And the answer is the Ellison family. So once again, a dynasty, if you're in the UK, of the Redstones. Yay, we're getting rid of the dynasty. Fantastic. Undeserving children being handed major corporations for no particular reason. Terrific, except, we're handing it to another person who's the son of another person who has made tech billions and backs Trump. So worse than ever. Brendan Carr, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. And by the way, apparently not chair of the FCC because his father was chair of the FCC or anything like that. Isn't that interesting? Well, he has said that the president's lawsuit against Paramount was not linked to the FCC's review of the company's merger with Skydance. Paramount has also said that the two issues were unrelated. Wink. Within the CBS newsroom, a prospective settlement was seen as a low moment in the near century-long history of a network that once housed Walter Cronkite and Edward R. Murrow, whose famed rebuff of McCarthyism in the 1950s was recently depicted on the Broadway stage by George Clooney, to no avail, apparently. Good reviews, no avail. 60 Minutes, which pioneered on-air investigative reporting, recently completed its 51st consecutive season as the country's most watched news program. But now, F it, we don't need them for anything. I guess. Mr. Trump sued Paramount for $10 billion last year, claiming that 60 Minutes deceptively edited an interview with former Vice President Kamala Harris in order to interfere with the election. The transcript of the interview showed that Ms. Harris gave a lengthy answer to a question about Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister. About 21 seconds of that answer aired in a preview of the interview on Face the Nation, another CBS News show. A different 7-second part of the answer aired the next day in a primetime episode of 60 Minutes. Mr. Trump said in his lawsuit that CBS's actions amounted to news distortion, if that's the thing, that was aimed at tipping the scales in favor of the Democratic Party. Paramount disputed that characterization because it's stupid. Even before its resolution, Mr. Trump's lawsuit and Ms. Redstone's apparent willingness to entertain a settlement had engulfed CBS News in turmoil. Tensions within the network over how to handle the president's legal attacks contributed to the resignation of the 60 Minutes executive producer, Bill Owens. The CBS News president, Wendy McMahon, was later forced out. Watching the case with Mr. Trump unfold, many CBS journalists believed the long-term credibility of 60 Minutes was at stake. It's really the long-term credibility of CBS in general, but okay. Scott Pelley, the veteran 60 Minutes correspondent, said last month that any settlement would be very damaging to CBS, to Paramount, to the reputation of those companies. Executives at CBS and Paramount applied more scrutiny than usual to segments on 60 Minutes that could be construed as critical of the Trump administration. So, reputation already trashed. CBS News has not killed the story because of the pressure, but Mr. Owens, when he resigned in April, said he would not be allowed to make independent journalistic decisions. Ms. McMahon said when she left that it had become clear the company and I do not agree on the path forward. Ms. Redstone told the board she was recusing herself from its discussions of how to handle the Trump suit. Sure. Given that her financial stake in the pending Skydance deal is so much greater than the stakes of other shareholders whose interests the directors are expected to represent. This spring, she was diagnosed with thyroid cancer and has recently been receiving treatment. Even before her diagnosis, though, she told board members that she wanted the company to explore a settlement with Trump. Redstone said she wants to avoid a protracted legal war with the president that could cost hundreds of billions, or rather hundreds of millions, of dollars and jeopardize other divisions that have business with the government. And that's where the billions comes from. Ms. Redstone has also told confidants that she harbors concerns about the editorial judgment of CBS News, which is why she loves owning it and can't wait to make giant dollars off of selling it. She has acknowledged being troubled by some of her network's news coverage and on occasion has raised those concerns publicly and spoken to corporate leadership. By the way, what divisions have business with the government? That we just read it and like, oh yeah, well, everybody kind of has business with the government. If you're a big enough company, eventually you have business with the government. But I'm trying to think of whether I know what that might be or whether that should be troubling. Senators like Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts and Bernie Sanders of Vermont have warned that any payment by Paramount to Mr. Trump could be construed as a bribe, and they said they would consider holding a congressional hearing about it. The prospect of being accused of bribery and perhaps facing legal action because of it had vexed Paramount's directors, who had to weigh the corporate benefits of a settlement against the perception that they were greenlighting a deal to secure an unrelated merger, which they are. Freedom of the Press Foundation, a First Amendment group, has said it planned to file a lawsuit on behalf of shareholders against Ms. Redstone and the Paramount board in the event of a settlement. We now have that event, of course. The group has retained the prominent litigator Abby Lowell for its efforts, and he's good. Paramount is planning to make changes on its board on Wednesday. That's today. Judith McHale, the long-serving director, is leaving, and the company's planning to add 3 new directors. Mary Boyes is of the counsel to the law firm Boyes, Schiller, Flexner. Charles Ryan, a co-founder of Almaz Capital, and Rowan Srago Licht, an adjunct professor at Boston University. So congratulations to those folks. You inherit the bad reputation of CBS, Sky, blah, 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 Paramount, whatever the hell they're calling it from now on. Going forward. Okay, just wanted to get that on the record. That did happen, and it's bad, and everybody knows it, but now you know it too, and you know most of the detail that goes along with it to give it context. All right, what else? Here's bad news to share with you, and why wouldn't I share bad news with you? Also from the New York Times, which itself is not bad news, although people are usually mad at them. Alan Feuer and Adam Goldman teamed up for this exciting bit of news. Pardoned January 6th rioter who threatened police, as they all did, joins the Justice Department. Yay. The pardoned rioter, a former FBI agent, isn't that special, who was charged with encouraging the mob that stormed the Capitol, is a counselor to Ed Martin. We're still not rid of that guy. The director of the so-called Weaponization Committee. If you like irony, it's a story for you. The former FBI agent who was charged with encouraging the mob that stormed the Capitol on January 6th, encouraging them to do what? Encouraging them to kill police officers. Kill police officers, he was encouraging. Has been named as an advisor to the Justice Department task force that President Trump established to seek retribution against his political enemies. This fits squarely in our newly opened file, Bizarro World Reconstruction. That's what I'm calling it. I need a better name for it, but that describes it well. The former agent, Jared L. Wise, is serving as a counselor to Ed Martin, the director of the so-called Weaponization Working Group, according to people familiar with the group's activities. Martin, a longtime supporter of January 6th defendants, was put in charge of the Weaponization Group in May after Trump withdrew his name for a Senate-confirmed position as the U.S. Attorney in Washington. They were like, yeah, no way. So he gave him something that he didn't need Senate approval for. His nomination faltered in part because of the work he had done as an advocate and defense lawyer for people charged in connection with the Capitol attack. Senators, we came to attack you. Will you approve this guy who said it was a good thing that you were being attacked? No, we will not. What a surprise. Even though some of them said, yeah, we will. They weren't here to attack me, and yet I ran away, Josh Hawley. Even in a Justice Department that has often been pressed into serving Mr. Trump's political agenda, the appointment of Mr. Wise to the Weaponization Task Force was a remarkable development. His selection meant that a man who had urged violence against police officers was now responsible for the department's official effort to exact revenge against those who had tried to hold the rioters accountable. Isn't that something, right? It's if a Democrat says something too weak in response, or something that's adjudged to be too weak in response to someone else saying, well, maybe we shouldn't listen to police officers, let alone kill them. Republicans are demanding that that guy resign, drop out of the race, what have you. But here, no, not only are they not encouraged to drop out from anything, they are appointed to Justice Department roles and are handed the job of taking revenge against Department of Justice officials who prosecute people who say, let's kill police officers. Like, there's just no dealing with it. There's no logic. There's no nothing. You're not going to make any sense of it. It's not going to help ever for you to understand what they're doing. It's just heads I win, tails you lose. When we say kill police officers, it's good. When they say maybe we shouldn't pay police officers as much or we shouldn't give them as much equipment, they're communists. They got to be killed. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. This just in, the breaking news I have to share with you from out of New York. Sean Diddy Combs has been acquitted of sex trafficking and racketeering, convicted of a prostitution offense, and yeah. So I don't know what that's supposed to, how we're supposed to take that one, but apparently that is the news, and boo-hoo, we're really maybe in trouble as a country. However, well, let's see, I guess if he's convicted of a prostitution offense, that still leaves a possibility that, or it leaves the talking point for Trump to run around musing whether or not he should pardon him. I don't know whether he was charged on federal charges or state charges, but I don't think that matters very much to Donald Trump. I mean, you know, the reality is that the president is supposedly only empowered to pardon people facing federal offenses, and it's always been very clearly understood that state offenses were beyond the president's reach, but this is Donald Trump, and I'm not certain whether he cares, and he may even be more interested in attempting to float a presidential pardon against state charges because everyone says he can't do it. I don't know what comes of it. It's just true. Anyway, so there you go. That's the breaking news out of New York, and it ain't great. Now let's turn back to the New York Times reporting on the appointment of, what was his name? Is it Jared Wise, the former FBI agent, accused and on trial, but by the time Trump pardoned him, for trying to encourage the mob on January 6th to kill police officers. Mind you, remember that they're still years later saying, well, you can't vote for Democrats because they want to defund the police. Well, can you vote for Republicans when they're pardoning people who said they wanted to kill police? And the answer, of course, is yes, absolutely. It's totally patriotic to say you want to kill police if you are a Republican or Trump supporter, or both. It's not always the same thing. And it is absolutely to be considered electoral death for a Democrat to be next to a person who once said, I'm not concerned about someone else who said defund the police. That's just kind of the way it is out there in America, unfortunately. It remains unclear exactly what role Mr. Wise will play as Mr. Martin's advisor. Well, it's unclear what Mr. Martin's role is, but an advisor to him would have even less clarity, I guess. But one person familiar with the working group's activities said that Mr. Martin was proud to have Mr. Wise on his team, adding that there was no better person, how can you even say that, to serve on the weaponization task force than someone who had experienced the federal government being weaponized against him, even though, of course, the alleged weaponization was the prosecution of the man who was weaponizing politics against police officers. Let's kill them because Trump. Yeah, can't you see how the government's been weaponized against this guy? He was charged with the crime, merely encouraging people to kill police officers. If, quote, here's a nice quote. If we could genetically design an advisor, and you can, to Mr. Martin, the person said, he would look like Mr. Wise. When federal prosecutors, and by the way, Mr. Wise is the name of the owl that sells Wise potato chips. So he would look like a cartoon owl, I think, is how that works. When federal prosecutors initially charged Mr. Wise in May of 2023, they accused him of telling the police outside the Capitol that they were like the Gestapo, Nazi Germany's feared secret police. As violence erupted, his charging document said he told other rioters who were attacking law enforcement officers, quote, kill 'em, kill 'em, kill 'em, all with exclamation points. Isn't that something? Well, that's a hell of a quote. Mr. Wise then raised his arms in celebration after breaching the Capitol in a face mask, prosecutor said, and escaped through a window. Just the normal day out. Tourism. It's a day of love. The case against him was dismissed on Mr. Trump's first day back in office as part of the sprawling grant of clemency the president gave to all of the nearly 1,600 people who took part in the Capitol attack. Charged people anyway. Mr. Trump's act of mercy, and I know they're talking about a pardon and clemency, and that's how we usually describe those things, because that's what the pardon and clemency power is for, but this isn't an act of mercy in any sense. I don't know why you're stuck with that. But anyway, it came in an especially significant moment for Mr. Wise. When his indictment was thrown out, he was in the middle of his criminal trial in federal district court in Washington. So that worked out for him. Mr. Wise worked on public corruption and counterterrorism matters at the FBI field offices in Washington and New York, but evidently not very well. He was briefly detailed to Israel, where he worked on with the Palestinian Authority. That's interesting. And to Libya, where he helped agents investigate the 2012 terrorist attack in Benghazi. So that guy's brain was wired wrong from the beginning. Mr. Wise left the Bureau after his supervisors in New York, of all places, became unhappy with his work, and his career had stalled, a former senior FBI official said. He couldn't even find supporters inside the New York field office. That's amazing, because it's allegedly was rife with Trump supporters. Mr. Wise later joined the conservative group Project Veritas, James O'Keefe's group, which was wrested away from him recently, but he joined Project Veritas under the supervision of a former British spy, Richard Seddon, who had been recruited by the security contractor Eric Prince, what a rogues gallery this is, to train operatives to infiltrate trade unions, Democratic congressional campaigns, and other targets. We did hear a little something about this before it all fell apart. But at Project Veritas, according to a former employee with direct knowledge of his employment, Mr. Wise used the code name what a code name it is, Benghazi. No one will ever figure this one out. And trained at the Prince Family Ranch in Wyoming with other recruits. I didn't even realize they actually did anything. Mr. Wise was among a group of Project Veritas operatives, and there's a link here to another story about that, assigned to infiltrate teachers' unions in Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Kentucky, according to the former employee. Mr. Seddon oversaw the operation. The Weaponization Working Group was created in February, not long after Mr. Trump returned to the White House, purportedly to root out, quote, abuses of the criminal justice process, like this one, by local and federal law enforcement officers. But as the name suggested, the investigative body was also an example of how the Justice Department under Mr. Trump's leadership planned to weaponize its expansive powers to investigate and perhaps take legal action against people who had run afoul of the president. According to a memo from Attorney General Pam Bondi, one of the group's missions was to look into the, quote, improper investigative tactics and unethical prosecutions, unquote, arising from the Justice Department's sprawling investigation of the Capitol attack. Like I said, bizarro land reconstruction. Just redefining what crimes are and who committed them, and shifting the burden 180 degrees so that it sits on the shoulders of the people who are actually enforcing the law. Bizarro world reconstruction. They think they won the Civil War here. The outcome of the Civil War, still a question mark in these guys' minds. By the way, speaking of other people getting in trouble who might have run afoul of the president, personally, and related to the CBS News settlement story that we just read moments ago. Where is, let me see if I can find what I was thinking of. It's probably right here, just in my own Blue Sky postings and feed from the last couple of days. So who's next under threat in the media world? And the answer really is CNN. What's going on here with CNN? Yesterday, when Trump and Kristi Noem and a few other weirdos found themselves alongside Ron DeSantis, 5'11" Ron DeSantis, standing every bit as tall as supposedly 6'3" Donald Trump, interestingly enough, were filmed at the new detention center, which we're not calling by their name, I guess, but the one in the Everglades. And Kristi Noem is asked at this point, I guess the new outrage that they're trying to fire up and manufacture, and this, it sounds like, was the question put to him by, first of all, let me see if I can't put this in Pocket so that I can transfer it over and play the tape for you. Oh, right. I have to manually enter it over in Pocket because they're closing down. We keep saying. So the question is put to them. I guess this is the, what do they call this one? Right Side Broadcasting Network. One of the right-wing lunatic groups that produce their own things that look like news actualities. Right, and Aaron Rupar keeps an eye on them. RSBN, I think that's Right Side Broadcasting Network. And I forget the name of the guy who does who's their main White House reporter, but he's the guy, he shows up, he's been in a couple of the White House press sprays when they're sitting in the Oval Office, like when they cornered Zelensky and when they corner the South African leadership and try to put the screws to him and make him look bad in front of the cameras. This guy is always there. And we've mentioned in the past that he's dating murdery trader Green. And so it's it's kind of a cool cottage industry in their house to be right-wing influencers. Anyway, let's see if we can grab it here and play you the tape, because there's a kind of a lot to it, what's going on here. And the setup, the question is designed to elicit a response wherein they will say, yeah, we're going to prosecute and or sue CNN next, after having done ABC and CBS and getting them all under their thumb. Did they do one on NBC as well? Did they get them? Well, CNN, I guess, would be the next one on the list. But he asks the question in such a way that it will be framed as, let's prosecute. Tell me about how you're going to hurt CNN. And Kristi Noem kind of whiffs the question in a weird way. That is, she gives an actual, almost the most normal, most legally sound answer you could give to this particular question. And then Trump notices, oh, you didn't pick up on let's prosecute or otherwise punish CNN. I will do that myself and I'll make the linkage for you. And then he makes it in a weird way that doesn't really hang together, but it doesn't matter because it's Trump. Okay? That's what's going on here. I forget the name of should we look up the name of the guy? Right Side Broadcasting Network. Oh, I could go to their Wikipedia thing, but who's their White House reporter? And that's they're going to tell me straight up, or do I have to thumb through things, or what? I should have just stuck with the Right Side Broadcasting Network Wikipedia entry, and they probably will tell me relatively quickly who their top reporters are. No, maybe not. All right. Well, I can't remember that guy's name. And I bring it up only because, well, one, it gives you some context about why they ask the questions that they ask. And two, in the end of this video clip, you can catch pieces of them mentioning, of Trump saying to somebody, blah, 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 Marjorie Taylor Greene, and it's somebody who was listening to it said, yeah, this is Trump telling other people, oh, that's Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend. Which is weird and gross, you know. Anyway, let's pull up this news clip Aaron Rupar collected from Right Side Broadcasting Network and shared with everybody on Blue Sky. Do we have the volume up on this? Yeah, all right, let's go.
And the damn secretary.
That is too loud. Okay, but there's Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, I think, yelling the question.
CNN yesterday pushed an app that lets you track where ICE agents are. Tom Homan was saying that perhaps CNN should be prosecuted for that as obstruction of law enforcement.
All right, so you see what the setup is. CNN yesterday pushed an app that lets you track ICE activity in an area so that either you can avoid the area or go protest, I suppose, depending. And should they be prosecuted for it? Trump gives the nod to it, so then Kristi Noem answers the question. It's directed to her, and so she nods, yeah, we're going to work on prosecuting that. Now, what's interesting here is, of course, the reporter said CNN pushed the app. CNN reported that there was such an app, but that's it. Now, Right Side Broadcasting Network will say, well, the fact that they reported it really amounts to pushing it. What do they want people to do? Ignore the news? But now Right Side Broadcasting Network is pushing the app as much as CNN is pushing the app. So aren't they guilty? Certainly of hypocrisy? Yes, but no, because reasons. And we're wearing hats that have slogans on them, so F you. All right, so then Noem answers the issue. Well, should we be prosecuting? She answers the way a normal-ish person really would. Is the app itself a problem? Are the people who created the app subject to prosecution? She says, yes, we're going to have Pam Bondi look into it, da-da-da-da-da. Trump sees, but you haven't said why we're going to somehow turn this into a prosecution of CNN. So CNN, he then jumps in, and he doesn't, well, you'll hear it. He doesn't actually offer an answer to that, but he goes off on a different tangent. All right. Kristi, what's the story here?
Yeah, we're working with the Department of Justice to see if we can prosecute them for that, because what they're doing is actively encouraging people to avoid law enforcement.
I'm going to pause it there just for a second. So she's saying we're looking at whether or not we can prosecute them, which, you know, it's a dumb answer, but it's the right answer. We're looking at it. You don't know whether you can prosecute them or not, and it's up to the Justice Department, and, you know, they're going to say yes, but we're looking at it. And this is an interesting thing. We're going to prosecute them because the app allows people to avoid law enforcement activities. Now, of course, if you go and find out, or you hear, whether through an app or through word of mouth, that ICE is active somewhere and you show up to protest, they'll say, get out of here. This is a law enforcement activity. In other words, we want you to avoid law enforcement activity. That is interesting, because you said you were going to prosecute anybody who tried to avoid law enforcement activity. And that's because if you're not the target of the arrest and we don't have a way to charge you for being annoying, we want you to avoid law enforcement activity. Don't show up and videotape it. You make us look bad. But if you're the target, we're out here to arrest you, then we don't want you to avoid law enforcement activity, because that activity is arresting you. So I don't know. They're speaking with euphemisms, but at least she's sort of saying, well, we're having the Justice Department take a look at it. But there's more.
Activities, operations, and we're going to actually go after them and prosecute them with the partnership of PAM if we can, because what they're doing, we believe, is illegal. All
right. So she's saying she thinks the app is or ought to be illegal. And, she's jumping to conclusions. We believe it to be illegal. But she is saying, she is hedging enough. But that's a problem. Don't hedge. Say the thing we want to say, that CNN ought to be prosecuted, not the developer of the app. So that's up to the boss. He's going to have to jump in and say it. But does he say, here's why CNN ought to be prosecuted over this app? No. He says, here's why CNN ought to be prosecuted about something very, very different. But the point is, I wanted to get on record that I want to prosecute CNN. Here comes the accusation.
And they may be prosecuted also for having given false reports on the attack in Iran. They were given totally false reports. It was totally obliterated, and our people have to be celebrated, not come home and say, what do you mean we didn't hit the target? We hit the target first. The pilots came home and they said we hit the target first. So they may be very well prosecuted for that.
So there you go. So what Trump wants to prosecute CNN for is they reported that the site wasn't obliterated, but it was obliterated. So that's illegal to report something other than what I said about what happened. And if you don't think so, well, think about the poor pilots. They came home and they were sad because they said, what do you mean we didn't hit the target? We hit the target. The pilots don't care. The pilots are glad they hit the target. I don't think they, look, man, I dropped the ordinance you gave me on the spot you said to drop it, and I lived. Mission accomplished as far as I'm concerned. Now, was it destroyed? It'd be nice to know that I didn't do it for no reason, but honestly, they don't care, and they probably, fine, we need to drop it again, we'll drop it again. I can do it. They're very confident people, pilots. I don't think they're very sad about the fact that CNN said, we're not sure what the damage report is, because the Pentagon said that. That's just part of every routine mission. How'd we do? Not as good as we thought. We got to do it again. It's not your fault. You did what we told you to do. They're happy with that. But he says they're sad and therefore it's illegal. Now, it's interesting that he didn't go out of his way to say, actually, CNN should be prosecuted for airing that story because they're pushing the app. Even he wasn't willing to go there. He wants to charge him with that. With the other thing, they reported a sad story that made pilots upset, and that should be illegal. But we'll also have the other thing. So he's conflating everything so that he's never on record saying we need to prosecute CNN for airing the story. Even he's not sure about that one. Then they babble about some more things, and then they talk about how Marjorie, murdery Trader Green, might be, having sex with the reporter.
They did there, we think is totally illegal. Okay, let's go. Follow us. Okay, you got it. Hi, Brian. How you doing? Doing all right? Thanks, Brian. Two good boyfriend, very lucky. Marjorie Taylor Green.
Oh, really? You works for who?
All right, so there you have the little bit there, and of course, once again, have to pause it so it doesn't play again. But little aside to other people. By the way, you see him? That guy he's the boyfriend, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Very lucky, very lucky. I don't know who's supposed to be lucky in all of that one, but pretty gross. Anyway, just thought I would throw that one into the mix so that you could know about it and go and. Yeah, but keep in mind, yes. So CNN, you're next. They're looking for a way to put you on hook. Does it make any sense? No. Do they have any case against you? No. Is there an affirmative First Amendment defense to it? Yes. Does that mean no case against you for this would ever stand a chance in court? Yes. Are you going to be asked to pay anyway? Yes. Are you going to decide to pay anyway? Probably yes. They probably will find a place where you are over a barrel and make you pay, and you'll say, it's not for that, it's not for that. And yet $16 million will leave your pocket and go into, to the presidential library, the best funded presidential library ever. With the fewest books, but the most money per book. Okay. And also they're going to steal an Air Force One and put it there for some reason. Okay. Not okay. But there you have it. All right, let's see. Other things. I need to update you on this because otherwise I'll have been derelict in my duty. But I timed it well. The day I told you that they were trying to pressure the president of the University of Virginia to resign, he did in fact resign. So you were up to speed on that story so that when he resigned, you said, oh, I knew they were trying. I didn't know they were going to succeed, but they did. The president of UVA has resigned. The New York Times did a report on it the day he did. I didn't get a chance to read it to you yet, but I'll probably skip to something else because we're limited on time. University of Virginia president resigns under pressure from Trump administration. I mean, straightforwardly true. Michael Schmidt and Michael Bender, who had covered the story to that point, also chimed in to let you know. These are the results. He's out. The Justice Department had demanded that James E. Ryan step down in order to help resolve a civil rights investigation into the school. It was a bogus civil rights investigation to begin with, and it wasn't even about civil rights. It was about how can we violate people's civil rights but make it sound like we're on the right side of civil rights, and that's what it was about. The reason I'm going to read you something different, though, is because Carolyn Fiddler had just shared on Blue Sky the note that she says, I remain unaccustomed to cheering for the Richmond Times-Dispatch editorial board, but this is where we are now. Besides having other stalwart conservatives suddenly speaking out and taking positions to the left of most progressives, like, who was I saying? Oh, Bill Kristol, kind of astonishing everybody with the things he's calling for these days, including defunding the police, interestingly enough. But Carolyn Fiddler has not just seen this one editorial about the UVA situation, but also one from yesterday in which she was forced to admit, I'm sure, that the Richmond Times-Dispatch gets it. They were reporting in their, or covering in their editorial, in Chesterfield, Virginia. ICE does its job. What is that job? Stoking fear for political gain. I haven't even read that editorial, and we won't have time to do it either. We're going to stick to the one on UVA, but just suffice to say, it's surprising to Virginia expert Carolyn Fiddler that somehow the Richmond Times-Dispatch ends up forced. There's no other position but to get it right at this point in time, and it's kind of astonishing. Am I going to be able to read you this piece? I don't know, now that I think about it, because I think we might be paywalled there. But we could try opening it again, and of course we could try opening it in Pocket and see if that works. Let's go, but we got to do it manually, so it's an extra step. Putting it in there. Let's see. This is a hell of a headline. Who's your daddy, Virginia? That's the question here. I guess I'm going to be stuck without it at this point. But the Wahoos, it's the unofficial nickname of the university body. They're the Cavaliers is their mascot, but for some reason Wahoos, I don't know the provenance of it. I'm not a UVA person, but who's your daddy? HOOS, your daddy, Virginia. Hint, it ain't Youngkin. That's pretty interesting, and I guess they're just pointing out the fact that it's Donald Trump running the show there at the UVA campus. All right, so I guess paywall issues are going to prevent us from reading the actual Richmond Times-Dispatch editorial, which is not a bad thing in general. I think we could probably, we'd run out of time anyway. But that's what you need to know, is that Carolyn Fiddler is confused and looking for to find her ground and find her grounding in a world where the Richmond Times-Dispatch editorial board could be right twice in a row. All right, time for us to, exit at this point. Nearly time to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I've got lots of ideas about what I might need to read to you just for the break that's coming up on Thursday, Friday, and Monday. Whether or not I'll be able to get it all on tape or any of it on tape, I don't know. But why don't I add this, since this is follow-up on something I mentioned earlier in the show, the Trump tariffs. CBS News reports, oddly enough, CBS News, aren't causing U.S. prices to spike. Here's why. Megan Cerullo looks into this one and has this to offer us. Despite concerns earlier this year that President Trump's tariffs would cause a renewed bout of inflation, which he says is totally happening and we got to get rid of it because, listen to me, Fed, the prices of goods and services across the U.S. have remained relatively stable. Not sure what that does politically or whether people really feel that or not. If they're having difficulty paying for some things, they might just feel like prices have gone up across the board. But the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index is the Federal Reserve's preferred inflation gauge. It rose 2.3% in May, modestly above the central bank's 2% annual target. The May Consumer Price Index rose at an annual rate of 2.4%, cooler than economists expected. So what's going on here? There are a couple of reasons why prices haven't shot up as much as they thought they might. And one of them, well, here's a list of them, but one of them is aggressive front loading, meaning that after the Trump administration announced its tariffs on Canada, China, Mexico, and dozens of other countries earlier this year, many companies scrambled to stock up or front load on products and parts and other imports to avoid incurring additional tariff costs. All right, time to play our music and get out of here. Other ones, waiting for clarity. People were basically saying, let's not jack up prices if we think taco will happen. Will Trump chicken out? Will he taco out of these tariffs? And we'll have giant price hikes built in, and then everyone will read the headlines that say there was really no reason for it, and we may have to take them back down again or just be embarrassed. There were also, of course, lower tariff costs than actually expected, since he jacked up the rates and then cut the rates and then said he would be suspending the rates and yada yada, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, uncertainty and tacoing and not wanting to be caught out and trying to avoid price increases for as long as possible has made it look like maybe the tariffs didn't cause as much chaos as they were supposed to. And I don't think that's going to come out well for us. You said that, and then it didn't happen, right? Things like that. Well, I mean, lots of things that you said were going to happen, like job growth didn't happen. As the preliminary job numbers come out ahead of Jobs Friday, I think I did say, well, Greg mentioned it, but Maria Bartiromo had the opportunity to try to unveil those early numbers and said, we're expecting 95,000 or so added jobs. Oh, it actually looks like we lost 30,000. Oops, not sure what to make of that one. Well, somehow you can get away with that prediction going wrong, but Democrats or others can't get away with their predictions going wrong.
NetworksRadio.com.
Not surprising.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right, stay tuned for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next. Of course, what's Justice got on tap for you? Trump's mid-decade census recount plan. Obviously illegal to anyone who cares, but guess what? It's going ahead anyway. And, of course, another collection of interesting stories from around the country and around the world coming up next. And we'll see you again live next Tuesday.